All right, here we are, session 3 of our January leadership seminar. Now, this is another one of those sessions that is really about the work that you're going to do after the session. This is very much what you put into it is what you're going to get. If you just listen to this, it's not going to make any difference. If you don't do the homework, this is not going to make any difference. You're not going to learn anything here that just changes your life without applying it. You've got to do the work. You've got to do the process, the homework for this to make a difference in your life. If you only put a little bit of effort, you're only going to get a little bit out. If you put yourself heavy into the homework that I'm going to give you, you're going to find that it can make a huge difference. But the information I'm sharing here is just a setup for that homework. The information is not just this one piece of information that's going to change everything. This is something that's going to lead into you doing the work to find change and to find a difference and make a difference in your life. So what we're talking about in this session is insecurity. The problem of insecurity. Now, I did Taekwondo for a number of years, and I can remember you fight guys that are bigger than you fight guys that are smaller than you, and there's this interesting dynamic when you're in the ring with other people and you can read, are they scared of you or are you scared of them? And it affects all the dynamics. When a little kid, I would be in class and we'd have a wide range, or I'd be helping with one of the younger classes, and one of the young kids came up to me. They might try to attack me and I wouldn't even bother defending myself. Now, the reason for that is they were a little kid and I knew they really weren't going to hurt me. And so I didn't have to defend myself. But when I started to train or fight with my instructor, all of a sudden I'm a little bit nervous and I've got my arms up and I'm a little bit more cautious and I'm careful, because if I don't do what I need to do, then he's gonna take me out. And so I'm in this place where I have to put my guard up. I have to become defensive because I know that I'm now threatened. When I'm not threatened, I don't even have to put my defenses up. When I am threatened, I put them up, and sometimes I put them up too much. And there would be times where I'm so nervous and so cautious and so defensive that I actually put myself into danger because I'm not doing what I should be doing to counter the attacks and deal with the situation. I'm just scared and cowering and hiding and running away, and that ends up leading to hurt. We see this in our lives all the time, where we're dealing with situations or we're dealing with people, and sometimes we're not threatened at all and we don't really pay attention to it. We don't get defensive. We're very comfortable and we can just deal with it. And then in other times, somebody says something, or somebody walks into the room, or something gets really complicated and we get really nervous and we get scared and we end up getting defensive. You see this when you're having conversations with family and somebody says something, and to everybody else in the room, they were just saying it. But you take it to be very hurtful and to be attacked, and that hurts, and you start attacking back and you start fighting and you start throwing venom to try to make them back off so that you're safe again. And other times it's a work task where you're given a task and people are walking to the room when you're trying to accomplish something, and you just snap their head off because you're already worked up and nervous about what's going on, and so you've got your defenses up and you're just attacking. Other times, something will happen with somebody, with something they say, or a situation gets hard, and you shut down, you're silent, you won't talk to anybody, you leave the room, no one can talk to you, no one can get in touch with you, and you just hide. So sometimes we fight back really poorly, or we run. And those defensiveness gets in the way of being able to deal with the situation and have freedom. Now, those defenses come up, whether it's running or fighting, those defenses come up because we are threatened. If you're not threatened, you usually won't get defensive. Okay? So if you're finding that you're getting defensive around certain people or certain situations or certain comments, that's most likely because you are threatened by those things. Okay? So you're threatened, so you become defensive. If you're not threatened, then you don't get defensive. You see this in other people. You see how they get defensive in those moments too. They're getting defensive because they feel threatened. Now, if you can get to the place where you aren't threatened because you are secure. So threatened means you're insecure. And if you're not threatened, you feel secure. If you can get to the place where you are secure, you will find that you aren't getting defensive, that you're just managing the situations. And that's what I want us to get to. I want us to get to the place where we are secure and not getting defensive because we're insecure or threatened. So how do you do that? Well, sometimes we like to deal with that through different coping mechanisms of saying, well, let's see. I am really insecure and scared of failing because when I fail, people are going to make fun of me. People will have information about me that they can use against me because that means that I am not being valuable or worthy. And if I'm a failure, then I'm not valuable. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I never fail. Whatever I do, I'm going to succeed at. And anything that I think I'm going to fail at, I either put more effort into to make sure I don't, or I'm just not going to do it because I don't want failure to be on my record, because I don't want to have to deal with the idea that I'm not valuable, and I don't want people to have any way to make fun of me or attack me. So I'm going to make sure that I don't fail. And so I'm going to put every effort into it, and I'm going to become a perfectionist. Sometimes it's I'm going to make sure that I have all the best makeup on and that I look the best so that no one can pick out my flaws. On and on the list goes about things that we're insecure about that we try to cope with by going to an extreme on the other end and holding on to those practices as the thing that makes us secure. Because if we're good enough, if we're strong enough, if we've got the best habits and best processes and we've trained enough, then no one can attack us because we're so good at it already that there's no gap in our armor. Our armor is there. It is safe, secure, and as long as we have that armor on, we're good. So that works to a certain extent, but it gets pretty exhausting, and there is no perfect armor. There is no perfect armor. There will always be a weak point. And whenever somebody finds that weak point, you'll find that you jump to that defensive nature and you're right back to those bad behaviors. Again, you see that with other people around you. You see that with people in your family, people you work with. You see that. So what is the solution here? Well, the solution is actually a spiritual solution. And that's the fact that real security comes from humility. Now, humility is not this thing where you just beat yourself up and say, oh, poor, pitiful me. And if I'm down on myself enough, then people can't beat me to making fun of me because I'm making fun of myself first. And so I beat them to the punch and that robs them of that. And if I'm down low and I have no expectations and I'm poor, pathetic, pitiful, then they can't tear me down any lower than I've already put myself. That's not what humility is. That's a bad coping mechanism is what that is. Humility is realizing that you are imperfect, you are broken, you are limited, but God says that you are valuable anyway. That humility of leaning into what God says about you, who He says, and what He's able to do in and through you, leads you to the place where your value and your self-worth is based on Jesus. And what He says about you doesn't change. And what He can give you doesn't change. And what He wants to do in you is unshakable. And His ability to do it is unbreakable. And so if your value and your worth and your mission and your purpose is based on Jesus, then all of a sudden you are in this place where they can attack you and it doesn't affect what Jesus says. They can tear you apart and show how big of a failure you are, how messed up you are, and it still doesn't change what Jesus says about you or how Jesus feels about you. They can look at everything you've ever done wrong and how broken you are, And it doesn't change how Jesus sees you, forgives you, loves you, and still wants to do great things in and through you. And all of a sudden, you're in this place where they can attack you. And it doesn't affect your value. All of a sudden, you're secure. Because now you've got this value that is unshakable, unbreakable. All of a sudden, it's just little kids coming up, throwing stones, and you're like, whatever. That's not going to hurt me. That's not going to have an effect, because the value that I have is unshakable. It isn't based on my performance. It isn't based on my appearance. It isn't based on what other people think about me. It isn't based on how I think about myself. It is based on who Jesus is, what he says to me, about me, what he feels about me, what he's done for me, and what he is doing. It is on him. And when your value is based on Jesus, you become secure. And so the humility is saying that this is not based on me, it is based on Jesus. And that creates incredible security that allows things to come at you and attack you, and leaves you in this place where you can take it, and now you can manage and you can respond and you can deal with it without getting defensive. So, it also, one of the other things it does is it allows you to evaluate yourself, to look at yourself, and people can come to you and say, listen, you're really not good at this. You failed with this. You've got problems with it. You can look at your own life and be like, I am not good with this stuff. I'm not good with conversation, or I'm not good with public speaking, or I'm not good at technology, or I'm not good with driving, or I'm not good coming up with games for the kids, whatever it is. And you can look at those things and you can see them. You can evaluate them and you can say, okay, I'm not good at those things. I'd like to improve those things. And all of a sudden that conversation, that reality, that dynamic has nothing to do with your value. Because your value is based on Jesus. And those are just things. Those are just attributes, realities, pieces of your growth or your context or what you want to invest in. And you can invest in them. You can admit, yeah, that's not good. Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, I need to get better at that. You can look at all that, you can deal with all that, and you can grow in all that, and it still doesn't affect your self-value, your worth, and your purpose, because that's given to you by Jesus, and those are just other dynamics. Those are unrelated to your value. And now you actually are in the place where you can really grow and you can really change without it affecting your value, without it being something that attacks you. It's just another detail. And so it puts you in this really great place to grow and to deal with all the conflict and all the drama and all the pressure of the world without getting defensive. So, this is your homework. This is your homework activity, okay? Number one, I want you to ask yourself, what are the things you are insecure about? What are the things you are insecure about? I want you to list those out, whether it's your appearance, your performance. Try to be as specific as you can. What people think about you, how your spouse thinks about you, what your kids think of you, whatever it is, okay? I want you to write down all the stuff that you are insecure about, okay? Then I want you to write down, this is just another way to get at it, what things do people criticize about you that hurts? What are the things that people criticize about you that hurts? So they say, oh, her hair is so horrible, or, oh, I can't believe that he's wearing that shirt again. Oh, there she goes, talking and talking and talking. Oh, there he is, late again. I don't know. Whatever it is, what are the things that people criticize about you that hurts? If it hurts, probably a sign that that's a bit of insecurity. Number three, what are the things you personally beat yourself up about? So that's not what people criticize about you. That's the things that you look at your own life. You think about yourself and you beat yourself up over. Oh, why do you have to be so dumb? Oh, why did you say that? Oh, I can't believe that you walked into that situation and responded that way. Whatever it is, what are the things that you personally beat yourself up about? That should give you a pretty good perspective of the things that you are insecure about. Okay. Question number 4, how might your pride or your thinking that you can fix it on your own be getting in the way? And so that's this idea of, if I practice these coping mechanisms, if I just become perfect, or I just focus on getting better at these things, then I'll be set. How does that practice or that idea get in the way of actually finding a solution? How does that kind of actually sabotage the process of finding true security? Okay, so I want you to ask yourself those 4 questions, and that should be fairly in-depth. That should take some time. I want you to take time to invest in that and really map that out, okay? And then what I want you to do is I want you to pick one specific thing to surrender to God in an act of humility to let Him create security in, okay? So what that means is, say you are really insecure about your appearance. I want you to say you pick that as your one thing. Pick that one thing and say, no, I'm going to surrender this to God, and I'm going to let Him speak to me. I'm going to let Him speak to me. And let Him determine my value instead of my appearance. Let Him speak to me about that. And you may be catching that a lot of this goes back to our first session from today. Our first session about those different levels of authority and those different things that get in the way. Those roadblocks or those chains. I want you to pick one thing that is a big insecurity for you. I want you to choose to surrender that to God and say, no, I'm going to let your word and let you determine what my value is, my worth is, and what your truth is. Okay? So, and maybe it's you don't want to be a failure, or you're scared of being made fun of, or you're scared of failing your family or running out of money, whatever it is. I want you to pick one thing out of your list. After you do that inventory, and we pick one thing out of your list that you're insecure about, and decide to surrender that to God and say, okay, this one thing. Start with this one thing. We need to work through all of it. But you start with that one thing. You pick one thing, bite-sized piece. Pick that one thing and say, no, I'm going to work on this, to surrender this to God, to let Him determine my value. That it's not going to be what I can build or what I can cope with or how I can fill in the gap myself. I'm going to let God determine my value, my worth, instead of this thing and through this thing and over this thing to create security. And when you start doing that stuff, you'll find that you're able to have hard conversations, you're able to work through problems, you're able to deal with conflict and criticism, you're able to deal with hard situations and personal failures and see them as just things that can grow and things that can change, that don't affect your heart. They don't feel like they're actually breaking you. And you will find that you are secure and that you can work through that stuff so much better, and you can find so much freedom and so much value in your life. And so that's your homework. Dig into it. If you don't put a lot of work into it, you're not going to get a lot out of it. So I encourage you to set aside time, dig into this, dig into these 3 sessions, put the work in, and you will find that God does some incredible things in you, and He will bring freedom, and He'll bring security, and He'll bring change, and you will become a better spouse or parent. You'll become a better family member. You'll become a better student or coworker or boss or employee. You'll just find that things get better inside. And so I encourage you to continue to push, to grow, and find security in Him.